What's up guys, I'm JayJT. Welcome to the channel and welcome to my first episode of gun reviews. In today's episode, I'm going to be going over how I get my results for these tests so you guys can see why you can trust the info I'm providing with in the coming videos, and to explain why I might have different results from other YouTubers because different people test using different methods. Before we get started, just a reminder, don't forget to like the video and subscribe with notifications on if you like the video. And if you want to support the channel further, check out my Patreon in the description below. Also, tell your friends about the channel. Any bit of help makes a huge difference for me and for the channel. We'll start things off with ADS speed. The way I test this is I go in game and aim down sights 3 times while recording on my capture card, and then I take the footage into a video editor and view it frame by frame and count the frames it takes to aim down sight. I start the count on the first frame that the hipfire crosshairs begin to move, which indicates that you have started to aim down sight, and I stop counting once the camera is fully zoomed in, which is when you are fully accurate. There are still some frames after this while aiming down sight, but they are basically just aesthetic, so I only count the frames up to the point where your weapon will be fully accurate when firing, and this is once the camera stops zooming in. Next up is movement speed, and the way I test this is I pick a spot on a map with a long unobstructed line of sight with an object that I can move past either to the left or to the right. I then stand next to that object and pick a point that lines up with the edge of my screen so that I have a consistent starting point every time. I then figure out the distance from where I'm standing to where I will end up, which is easy in this game with the D-pad since it will tell you the exact distance, and this actually helps out tremendously for me. I then back up and start my movement to ensure that I am at the full movement speed when I hit the starting point, and I mark the frame that I passed the starting point that I put to the edge of the screen earlier, and the point that I stop moving at the end of the path, and I then have the amount of time it takes to move that set amount of distance. I then convert that to meters per second and then convert that to miles per hour for the final result. I do one run through for the ADS movement speed because it is so slow that there won't be much variance. I do one run through for the base movement speed, and if it aligns with the in-game stat, then I go with it, but if I get something significantly different than the in-game result, I run through 3 times and take an average of the 3 results because there will be a slight variance between those results. With sprinting speed, I always do 3 run-throughs and I take an average of the 3 results, which they're all 3 usually very close to each other anyway, but there's going to be a little variance. You're not always going to get the same exact results. That's just the way that the frames work. After that, we have sprint out time, and the way I test this is I start sprinting and I break my sprint by firing my weapon, and I do this 9 times total. I then look at the video frame by frame and count the frames. While sprinting, the crosshairs disappear, and I start the count once the crosshairs reappear, which indicates that I have started to exit sprint to fire the weapon. I then stop counting when a bullet has exited the weapon, as indicated by the ammo counter in the bottom right. This result will vary from one sprint out to the next, but they are usually within 2 frames of each other, and this is why I test this 9 times and take an average of those 9 times, because like I said earlier, with frames you're going to get some variance. You're not always going to land these on the exact same frame, and so it's best to go ahead and take multiple tests and take an average of all of them instead of just sticking with the first result you get, because you might get a result that is pretty far from the average. You know, for example, it may take 13 frames on average, but the first time you test it, you might get something like 16 frames, and if you were to just go with that, then you would never know that the actual time is around 13 frames. With the reload speed, I fire a bullet and reload the gun while holding the firing trigger so that my gun will fire the instant it is ready to fire again. I start counting the frames as soon as the player's hand starts to move from the weapon, and I stop counting once the first round of the next clip is fired, since this is effectively how long it took to reload the weapon to the point where it is ready to fire. I do the same thing with the mag dump reload, except I obviously fire every round out of the clip in order to test the mag dump reload. Moving on to rounds per minute, this is fairly simple. All I have to do is fire a full clip and measure the time it takes to fire the rounds. I start the frame counting once the first bullet leaves the weapon and stop counting the frame that the last bullet leaves the weapon. I then have the amount of time it took to fire that clip. A mistake I see that some people make though is they count all 30 bullets for this in a 30 round clip, but the first round is fired instantly and does not actually factor into how long it takes to fire each shot. I measure the time it takes to fire the 29 rounds and convert this to rounds per second and then rounds per minute. So far my results have all come within 10 rounds per minute of the result in game, and so this means that the value shown in game is a pretty reliable number to go by. I haven't tested any weapon that was really far off from what the in-game stat shows, so far you can trust that rounds per minute number in game. The final thing I'll go over is time to kill, and for this I take the rounds per minute and figure out how long it takes to fire a single shot. Then I determine how many bullets it takes to kill. If a bullet is fired every 100 milliseconds and it takes 5 bullets to kill, then the time to kill is 400 milliseconds. Now you might be sitting there thinking, JayJT, that is definitely wrong. 100 times 5 is 500. Where'd you get your math from? Well, it's actually a little bit different when it comes to calculating this. You multiply the time it takes to fire a bullet by 1 less than the number of bullets it takes to kill. So in this case, 100 milliseconds times 4, since it takes 5 shots to kill. The reason for this is because the first bullet fires instantly, so you only have to wait for the next 4 bullets to come out of your gun. So this is how you calculate your time to kill. For some time to kill values, I'll be factoring in bullet velocity as well, but that's just some additional math and we'll get into that when the time comes. I'll just be doing that to do a comparison for you guys between 2 different weapons, how much the bullet velocity affects the time to kill between those 2 weapons. That's going to wrap things up for this video though. I hope you guys learned something and hope this helps people with trusting my results for my gun reviews coming soon. This wasn't meant to be some crazy interesting video, and I'm sure not a lot of people really care too much about this information, but this is just for the people that do care about how this is done, or for the people that may not trust my results in the future. They can look back to this and see how I get my results and hopefully form a little bit more trust with my results. Don't forget to like and subscribe on the way out, guys, and check out my Patreon in the description below if you want to help me further so that way I can keep doing these videos for you guys. JayJT out.